All right, thank you. All right, yeah, thank you for coming out, NolaCon survivors. The party was great last night. You guys go see that? You see Fuzzy and dual core play? I just said that was really fun. I'm really glad to see that. And so I know what it was like last night, and I'm glad to see you all here. I'm also glad to be here and want to go through a series of what I call parlor trick hacks. They're basically a collection of attacks and compromises that I've seen many people do. I have a slide at the end that kind of show you who I took most of these attacks from. But I wanted to put together a narrative, a story of how some very bad decisions and poor configuration options that I see some organizations do, how you can kind of string these things together to basically steal all the things. And so the tactics that I put together here are not terribly sophisticated, but they are effective. They work, and they do actually get you from nothing all the way to domain admin and stealing Active Directory. So what I'm going to go through here doesn't use a lot of the suites and the tools that we use, but the reason that I did that is because I wanted to be able to show ways to do these compromises and be able to describe it to some of the businesses that I talk to. Because if I can show native Windows tools that can lead to some pretty terrible things, that gets their attention and it lets them think maybe there are things we could do better. So that's what this whole series is about. And to kind of set the stage, we're going to start out where we have to get into an environment and then look around and then actually do the compromise and take all of the steps. And we're going to do this basically with 3 different machines, right? We're going to start out trying to get into a workstation, and we're going to end up compromising that. Then we're going to take that workstation and jump over to a member server and compromise that. And once we get from there, we're going to jump over to the domain controller and then take everything, all right? So you want to see what that looks like? Let's start up me. I'm Shannon Fritz. I'm a solutions architect at a company called Concurrency. And I'm actually really fortunate to work at a company like that because they actually sponsor to have me come out and do these kinds of talks. So I know after talking with a lot of you that a lot of you are on vacation and personal time, and this is actually my job. So I'm really fortunate to work at a company that gives me the opportunities to participate in these kinds of events, where I also work with our customers on making improvements in security. So my background is quite varied. I've worked in a lot of infrastructure and mobility, but today I'm working with customers on making improvements in their security decisions. At the end of the presentation, I'm also going to have my email address with a special subject line that you can get the deck. So if you want to, you don't have to like rush through and take a bunch of notes, but what I'm basically going to be doing is doing the attack, showing you a slide on things you can do to mitigate it, and then going back into the attack thread. So that at the end you can get the deck just by emailing me. So again, to kind of set the stage, what we're going to start out with then is the story of somebody losing their laptop, right? Somebody might have gotten mugged. Maybe they left it on some transit, or maybe they went to a bar, and when they get up to go to the bathroom, they come back and the laptop's gone, right? So the laptop is gone, and what might that mean? If we, think about in many cases, it might just be that someone wants the hardware, right? They're going to take it, format it, use it for their own purposes. But if we wanted to do something more nefarious, what might that look like? So if we jump over here, let's assume this is the laptop. Obviously, if we're doing demos, I want to be able to roll back snapshots and stuff. So if this were David's laptop, some of the things that we could find out right away is that, where this laptop is from, right? We can just pretty easily look over here and see like, oh, this is from this tech ready organization. And with that information, I can start looking around and figure out who is tech ready, where are they located. But maybe I'm targeting this organization, and that's exactly why I took this laptop. So I might already know some information like that about them. But I want to get some things off of this machine. Well, if I knew, obviously, his username and password, I actually don't even really need his username, right, because it's already logged in. I just need to type and get in. But I don't know his password. I don't know his PIN. I don't have his finger. I don't have his face, so I can't do any of those hello gestures to log into the machine. But if I still wanted to get in the box, the easiest thing to really do is just reboot the machine. And on rebooting, we're just going to boot off of like the Windows setup CD. Right, so I just take the setup CD that I download from the demo site or TechNet and boot the thing up. Not some hacker tool or anything like that, just the ISO. And then, of course, it runs Windows PE. And Windows PE, if you do any kind of disk imaging, you know that you can use this for running a variety of tools but one of them, you really just hold Shift and hit F10 and you get a command prompt. And at the command prompt, we can open up Notepad, and inside of Notepad, you can go to File and Open, and then we can just start browsing around the file system. All right, so we can come in here and see that, I've got a USB drive attached to this computer, but we also have his C drive, so we can go ahead and double-click on that. We can see under Users, there's David's profile here, so we can look in here, go to his documents, and we go and change the file types to everything. We can go ahead and just copy this file, go to the USB drive, go and paste it, and then look, ooh, yay, I just stole some stuff. Not super convenient to do one file at a time, but I can, right? I can copy stuff off of the drive. If I wanted to get more things, I actually want to get into this computer. What's a little bit more useful is to go to the C drive. Oops. And then we can go into the Windows System 32. And then there's that file in here called sethc.exe, and we can copy the cmd.exe right over the sethc.exe and say, yes, I want to overwrite that. And then, of course, we just close this out, say, yes, we want to reboot. And then when we reboot this time, we're not going to boot from the ISO. We're just going to let Windows load like normal. And who knows sethc? I assume somebody knows, right? Yeah, sethc is sticky keys, right? So sticky keys is that accessibility option that allows us to do things like press the Control or the Shift key, and it actually holds it for us so we can hit the other buttons. But if we use sticky keys, you hit it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hitting the Shift key, and now I get the command prompt on the lock screen. And if you say, who am I, we can look in here and see that not only am I running sethc.exe right here, but I'm also running a system. Right? So just replacing a file, rebooting the computer, and using sticky keys, now I can get a system-level command prompt at the lock screen. Now I can invoke actions as the computer. I don't have to do much else. I am the machine now. But I still want to get into the computer so I can interact with it, right? With fancy GUIs, because GUIs are fun, right? So instead, what we're going to do is run comp mgmt.msc, and this will load the computer management console. And in the computer management console now we can go into users and groups, and we see there is actually a local admin account on this machine, which is a pretty bad decision. But I could right-click and change this password and get into the machine, but I'm going to hold on to that one, leave that one as is for now, and instead I'm actually just going to right-click, create a new user, and give them a fancy name, and we'll give them a password. And we'll make sure it doesn't expire so that I can use it without, being cumbersome with that. And then add this user to the administrator's account or group. And then we can close this, go ahead and close that, log in as a different user to the local machine with that account, and log in. So now I'm able to get into the computer, right? I have my own account, I'm a local admin, and I can use it just like a regular in a way you would with a user on the machine. I don't have to do any kind of remote command and control. I'm actually just on the box locally. So the question I get after that usually is, well, what do you do to stop that? Right? So we'll jump back to the deck, and we'll revisit this a couple of times, but what would you do to stop that? BitLocker, exactly, yeah. If we can encrypt the hard drive, then you can't interact with the file system outside of the context of running Windows, right? So that would have prevented me from being able to replace the sticky keys with command.exe, and it would have made it so that I couldn't have gone and create my own account. So just encrypting the drive would have gone a long way. And BitLocker being built into Windows is something you can literally just turn on, right? You right-click on the C drive, enable BitLocker, and you're good to go. As an enterprise, though, you need to manage it. So if you wanted to maybe do a passive audit so you can show that you actually are encrypting your systems, you can use MBAM, which is the Microsoft BitLocker administration and monitoring tool. It has an on-prem server that the agents you deploy report back and tell whether or not the devices are actually compliant with the policy for encryption. And it can also invoke the encryption. If you use group policies, you can only say what to do when it turns on. You can't actually turn it on with group policies. So you have to use an agent for that, and that's what MBAM does. Also, if you've heard of Azure Active Directory join, Azure AD join, you can have Windows 10 machines join Azure Active Directory, not Windows Active Directory, but Azure AD. And if those machines are instant go capable, which means that they have connected standby enabled, they will automatically turn on BitLocker. So there's nothing you have to do. You literally join the directory and it turns itself on. For some monitoring, if we wanted to see some activity to know like what's happening on the machines, we can use Windows Defender ATP. Has anyone heard of that? Defender ATP? Not just Defender, but Defender ATP. So Defender ATP is a new thing for Windows 10. If you're running the Windows 10 Enterprise and you have the E5 SKU, which comes with a variety of licensing bundles, the E5 SKU gives you Defender ATP, which is a new cloud service that allows you to see actions and activities happening on the workstation. Not just like Defender, where it'll do signature-based detection of files and binaries, but activities happening on the machines, things happening in memory, network connectivity, and process forking, all that kind of stuff. So just to show what that looks like, we can jump over here. And this is the Windows Defender dashboard. And in here we can see kind of the heads up of all the alerts and the warnings and things. And in my demo environment, I do a variety of these demos so we can see a couple of things that have popped up. So for example, the sticky keys hijack, right? If you replace that file, it can say, hey, this doesn't look like .hc.exe. It is running something else. But it can also detect that the file itself has been replaced and what it looks like. So here is the setHC. We can see that it then ran the MMC and who am I. Right, so those are the things that I did, and it saw that, and it can report on it, give you a warning, and say, sticky keys isn't supposed to be doing that, bro. Like, you need to do something about this. But it can also detect a series of other things. For example, if we jump back here quick, we can also see, it saw a suspiciously named hacking tool, which happens to be Mimikatz. And we can see things like the right to left override. You've seen that, the character that allows you to take the letters and shift them from left to right instead of right to left. So you can make an exe look like a JPEG, for example. So that, or in this case, I'm actually doing a PDF where using the sticky keys or not sticky keys, but the left to right override, it actually looks like the extension's been switched. And if you have extensions turned off, you only see .pdf, you don't see the .exe. So a variety of things that can be detected in here. But once you come in and you do some investigations, we can see things like, let's say, the sticky keys hijack that we just did. You can see over here that this is the machine that this activity had taken place on. So now I can say, well, who's been logged onto this machine? Who do I need to contact and do some actions with? I say, oh, well, this is David's computer, and the help desk is logged into this machine. And there's also this Hacksaw account that's on the computer, so maybe that's not so good. But if I decide that all of these other alerts that have come up on this machine now mean that I need to do something like take an action on this computer, I can actually click here and do one of two things. One is this investigation package. It'll basically collect some files and log data and tell me some more information that's on the machine so I can investigate what went on with the computer. But I can also isolate the machine, which basically instructs it to shields up the firewall and prevent it from talking to anything except for the Defender ATP service. So that's a pretty handy tool. Now I can shut the machine off the network, contact the user and say, hey, bring in your brick. We need to pave this machine and give you a new setup. So that's Defender ATP. It's a pretty neat service that it gives us a lot of protections and actions that, as a blue team, we don't really have a lot of solutions for that right now. So let's jump back over to our workstation. And now that I'm logged into this computer as my Hacksaw account, I want to start taking some stuff. So usually what that means is basically what we had done on the setup CD. So we'll go into the C drive. We'll take a look at maybe David's profile. In this case, now it tells me, hey, you don't have permissions to access his files, but I'm a local admin now, so I can just take permissions. Before, I wasn't operating in the context of the operating system, so it didn't really care about permissions at that point. But now that I've taken permissions or given myself access, I can come in here, I can copy all of his files off of his documents, and then I can go over to my USB drive, and I can steal all this stuff. So we'll go over here, USB, and paste it. Okay. Now, what else he's got on here? Like in this case, he happens to be using OneDrive for Business, And with OneDrive for Business, he syncs all of his stuff offline, just like with Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever. So we can come in here, and here's a pretty bad habit that a lot of organizations actually still do, where they're creating password files because they have a lot to manage. So using password managers would be a really good alternative here, because now I can log in and check out his bank, I can check out his timesheet, and I can read his personal email, I can do all kinds of stuff with his passwords, also use them to try and log into other systems that maybe are he's doing password reuse. But let's go ahead and take that, his pictures and his taxes. I'll take this and paste it over here. Another one that's really interesting to grab is right over here in App Data, and under Local, Microsoft, Outlook. And under Outlook, we can take this, which is his Outlook cached inbox. So now we can read all of his mail, and there's all kinds of stuff to search in their inbox, right? Like if this person was recently onboarded, I might be able to find out, how do you get into the building? How do you get on the VPN? How do you get on the Wi-Fi? It might all just be in his email, because, well, that's how people find that stuff out, right? So now that I have a copy of his inbox, I can also figure out who he has good relationships with, his bad relationships, maybe who his customers are, contacts, and all that stuff I can use for for expanding, like phishing campaigns, for example. So now that we have all of these things, what kind of tactics can we use to prevent this from being a problem? Well, if we were to use BitLocker, BitLocker would also have stopped us from being able to copy files off of the machine. So if we did like the setup CD and used a tool to copy things off of it, we wouldn't necessarily have to have made ourselves a local account to get into the machine to do this. So BitLocker might have prevented that. But if you had like a remote shell on this machine and you were running in the context of David, you would have had access to these files and could have copied them just as easily. So in that case, we might need to encrypt the files themselves, not just the file system. And if we're using something like Azure RMS, we can do either selective encryption of content that we deem to be sensitive. And the nice thing about Azure RMS is that if you're using Azure Active Directory, there is no real change to user behavior here. They don't have to like enter a key or some other kind of way of decrypting the content. They just open the content in Office, and because they're logged into Office with their Azure AD account, it can automatically check out the decryption key and interact with the files. So Azure RMS is a really good option. It's actually called Azure Information Protection now. It's the RMS name doesn't really ring very well with a lot of places, because RMS was always traditionally a pain in the butt to deploy. Azure RMS, you basically enable it and then you use it. There isn't much else to deploy, so it's really useful now. Also new for Windows 10 is what's called Windows Information Protection, or WIP. Windows Information Protection uses Azure RMS under the covers. So instead of needing to take the SDKs and develop your applications to be RMS enlightened, we can actually just, as an organization, declare certain applications to be enterprise apps. And an enterprise app then can have an RMS policy applied, so any files that it interacts with becomes encrypted and decrypted transparently. So we can say WordPad is an enterprise app, and when you open up a text document in our RTF, it will encrypt that file transparently at the OS. There was actually an article posted, I think, 2 days ago on the TechNet blog that covers WIP, if you want to know more about that. Okay, so now that we've gotten into the machine, we've stolen some files off of it, we want to take our next step and find a way off of the machine. So let's take a look at how to find the corporate network. Now, because I'm doing demos on a VM, it's actually hard to attach a wireless network adapter to a VM, despite my efforts. So I got this other machine that I'm logged in here as a local admin, same Hacksaw account, domain join. And this machine, I used another domain account to connect to other wireless networks. And when you connect to other networks, you can tell it to remember or connect automatically. And when you do that, the machine saves a list of the networks you've attached to. So we click over here to Network Settings, and then we can go to Manage Known Networks, and then we can see this list of networks that this computer has connected to. What's nice for us is that these are saved so that any user that logs into the machine can use them again later. So I'm logged in as a local account. I did not connect to these networks. Someone else did. And now I can reuse them because they've been saved in the machine. Now, because I'm a local admin, I can interact with things as the machine, but I can also scoop these network settings out of here. So if I would do that, let's open up a command prompt. And at the command prompt, I'm going to go over to the desktop. And we're just going to use NetSH for this. So you just do NetSH WLAN export profile, and the key should be clear. And then this generates a couple of XML files, and then we can go ahead and take a look at what's in here, and we can see not only the SSID of the network that we're going to connect to, but it also shows, hey, this is WPA2, and here is the passphrase, so you can go ahead and use that to log in to the network. So now I know their SSID and the clear text password to go ahead and connect. I could connect my own devices. I could also take these XML files and re-import them. That's actually the intent behind this, is if I'm an administrator of an organization, I could pre-configure the wireless network settings and just run the import of this XML file, and I don't have to like walk our user through that, that annoying process of connecting the wireless network. This will also export the certificates if you're using certificate-based Wi-Fi. I'm not totally sure. The last time I did this, somebody said you could actually get the private keys of the certs that you're using too. I haven't tested that yet, so I'm really interested to know if that's actually the case. I know Mimikatz has ways of doing that, but if you're using NetSH, I don't think you actually get the private keys. So what can we do to prevent this? Well, first, that is a function of a local administrator. So if you have local admin, you can do this. So preventing users from having local admin is a good one. If you have a remote shell on a machine and the user's not local admin, you couldn't run NetSH to dump this out of here, right? But if they are a local admin and I'm remotely connected to the guy's machine, then you could use this to get their wireless passwords and then go to their offices, connect to the Wi-Fi from the parking lot or from the bathrooms or somewhere, and then get on their network because you know the credentials. And if you wanted to use certificate-based Wi-Fi to deploy it, you can use group policies to configure those things, as well as MDMs. So if you're using something like Intune to manage Windows 10, you can actually configure the wireless networks and certificates. So you can have group policy to automatically enroll, automatically renew, and set up the wireless networks all with policies. So it's actually not as tough as sometimes it seems to be. Okay, so now we're kind of at the point where we've gone through, we've compromised the machine, and now it's time to kind of look around and figure out where can we go from here. So let's assume that we just did the wireless, we've got the SSID network, and maybe we looked them up on wiggle.net, or we just know where this company is, or we found their address on their website. And we drove to their office, we're sitting in the parking lot, and we connect to the wireless network. What kind of things can we find? So back here on our workstation, we minimize these things here. One of the tools that I usually use just in troubleshooting, and I used to do a lot of direct access deployments, so a tool that I always used was NLTest. If you've ever used NLTest, it's an Active Directory tool. So we can just open up a command prompt here. Let's see. Click. So we'll open up a command prompt. A little laggy. And at the command prompt, we'll just run NLTest. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So we'll go to keep up. And 20 should be good. Okay. So if we do NLTest /DC list with a colon, this will actually query the Active Directory to give me a list of domain controllers. Now, since I'm running as a local account, I don't have permissions to do a query against Active Directory, right? I don't have read permissions. But it does still tell me the name of the primary domain controller, right? So if that's all I wanted, that would be really useful. But I want to get some more information because NLTest usually tells me more about all of the DCs and the sites in Active Directory. So what we can do is use the computer, right? Because since I'm a local admin, I can invoke actions as the system. But if I try sticky keys, it'll give me a command prompt, but it actually still is running in the context of my local account, not running as system right now. So I want to be system. Well, in order to do that, we're going to go use a tool to do some elevation of privileges. And thanks to our friend Mark Rasinovich, he gave us PS exec. So here's PS exec. We'll go ahead and copy this right over here to the C drive. I'm going to make a new folder over here called tools. And then tools, we're going to paste that. We'll come back over to my command prompt, go to tools, and here's my PS exec. So we'll run PS exec. We'll run a system interactive do not wait for cmd.exe. And what this does is, well, first prompts you to accept the EULA, so yes, we'll do that. And then when we run who am I, you can see we're back to running a system, right? So the local admins have the abilities to invoke these actions and become system. Now that I'm in system, I can do my query again. So let's go ahead and do nltest/dc list. And then this time, it gives me the whole list of things in Active Directory. So now I can see where other domain controllers are. I can see names of sites, and it gives me some insight to the topology of the network and relationships between them, right? So just a real quick and dirty way to get a dump of all the DCs. Now, I want to go after the primary domain controller because why not? Let's just go for broke and get the biggest one. And since we already know the name of that, we know DC3 is ultimately going to be our target. Now that we know that, there's some other things that we can ask Active Directory. So let's make this a little bit bigger again. And change here. And also we'll extend that. Cool. So now what I can do is basically just get a list of all of the users in the domain. So there's a net user /domain. And so this will actually just dump all of the Active Directory accounts, and I can take a look at any users in here and start inferring things like naming conventions. I can get an idea of who's in there, maybe figure out through social networking, I can find out, well, maybe whose account is what their actual name is. But I can also see things like the groups that are in there with the same kind of command. So instead of net user, I just do net group domain. So this will dump all of the groups in Active Directory, and then with that I can start looking around and see, well, what kinds of products and services maybe they use, because, naming conventions, we like to name things, the products that we use, so we can see that they use remote desktop services, they have some level of MFA, Intune's in place, Hyper-V, Exchange, and so we can start using that as a way to decide, well, what kinds of products might be out there that we can maybe compromise and get in. We can also be more specific, so we can say net group domain admins in the domain. And this will actually give me the list of all of the domain administrators that are out here. And because I know that these accounts are domain admins, these are probably the ones I'm going to target, right? I want to find out where these accounts are being used and see if I can get the credentials for those accounts. Well, we can also see that with the naming conventions, the A- probably means humans and administrators, and S- probably means service accounts. And what do we know about service accounts and their passwords? They never change, right? Nobody changes passwords for service accounts because it's a hassle. So those are probably going to be our golden tickets. Those are the ones that we really want to get. And if we look at like this, we can see that they have SQL. We have this app service. We also have VMM and some other ones. And if we can find those accounts somewhere, that's going to be the ultimate thing, right? We can get what we want with those accounts. So now what we need to do is find some computers that we can attach to. There are some things we can do like NSLOOKUP to try and do a zone transfer and dump all of the DNS, but that's kind of loud and usually doesn't work because domain controllers as of 2008 and up reject that kind of a query. So instead we can just return to our friend comp management, mgmt.msc. Oops. Comp mgmt.msc. And again, I'm still running this from the context of the system, so now I can actually do queries against Active Directory with this account. So let's go into groups and pick any group. I usually use domain admins because it's funny. And then if we go and do an advanced search, we can change the object type here to just show me computers. And if we do find now, in this list now we can actually see a dumping out of Active Directory's listing of all of the computers in the domain. So I can start doing the same sort of list and start going through and say, well, where are these machines? Are they online? Is it using a product that I know I can compromise? And in this case, I actually have app server, and if humans do what humans do, app server and app service are probably related to each other. So if I can get on app service, I can probably, or the app server, I can probably use the app service account, right? So that's, if we target that machine, we need to figure out how can we get on that box. So in order to administer that machine, if I was an admin in the organization, I would probably use remote desktop. So if I can RDP to the machine with credentials, I can probably find out where the service account is. So kind of connecting the dots a little bit here on some assumptions, but it's not uncommon, right? This is a very common practice, and it's actually pretty likely to work. So what do I know right now? I know where their primary domain controller is. I know a service account. I know a server. I have access to the network. And I also know that they're already in the habit of using a local administrator account on their machines. And if they're doing that, they're probably using it on their servers too, right? So if we remember over here, I have in the comp management window under users, I have this local admin account. Now, if they're reusing this account too, I could use it to get into app server, right? So since I'm local admin on this machine, the credential for this account is saved, and if I use another tool, like Mimikatz, I can dump those credentials. So let's go ahead and get that credential. If we come back over here to our set of tools, we have these files for Mimikatz, and if I try and copy this and paste it over here to the C drive, Defender pops up and says, "Oh, gotcha." Well, all right. Let's go back into Defender. I'm a local admin, so I can go to my my protection settings, and I can say turn off real-time protection. Yes, I really mean that. And then say try again, and it'll paste that file that I want, and haha, I did it. So now, if I go to my tools directory and say dir, now I have Mimikatz. Now, if we look at this Mimikatz script. Basically, all I'm doing is I'm running Mimikatz using the debug privileges, and then I'm going to dump the LSA database, right? So so I don't have to type it, make it faster, we're going to go ahead and do Mimikatz. Shoot, I got to paste my files again. Come back over here, go to Tools, Mimikatz, copy. I did this last time too, and I was trying to just be quick and paste stuff. There. Now I can run it. So now that'll go through, it dumps the SAM database of the local admin account, and in here, if we go ahead and copy it, right, we can go edit and mark. We have our local admin's password hash. We can copy that. Then we're going to use our hacking tool, the internet, and we're going to go to crackstation.net, and then they have this neat little text box to paste it into, and we're going to type in this I'm a human challenge, MENTOS JGEOT. Last time I did this, the text that came up had but in the name. So in this case, the password that they're using is pretty bad, right? Because it's in the database. I just look it up. I don't have to crack it. I don't have to reverse it. I don't have to use, John the Ripper or Hashcat or anything. I can just look it up. And that's also not a terribly uncommon practice, so it's not very hard to undo this. So if you are using these accounts, you should at the very least use a much better password. But the real solution to this is to, frankly, not use those local accounts that are spread around your organization. All right. If you do have local accounts, LAPS, we've talked about that at other sessions this week, where you can use the local administrator password solution to roll the passwords on these accounts. But they're usually for like the named administrator account. If you're using group policy or your imaging process to create an account that's local admin, this is going to be a problem, and you should just stop doing that. Other things that we can do is things like device guard, right? If we're using device guard, we can actually make application whitelists and prevent us from using some of the tools that we had used. And then we couldn't do things like dumping the credentials off of the machines. But you saw I was using in Windows 10, right? This was even the insider preview, so this is the latest build that was released just the other day. So it's not an issue with the build or version of Windows. That's actually just how Windows works. So don't use those accounts. As far as monitoring goes, we can use something called Advanced Threat Analytics, or ATA. Advanced Threat Analytics will actually let us see activities happening in Active Directory. So when we were doing some of the reconnaissance to find who's in the directory, dump a list of users, dump a list of groups, as well as other things like pass the hash and pass the ticket, golden ticket, skeleton key, like those kinds of activities where we're interacting with Active Directory, we can monitor and detect those things with ATA. So if we jump back over here real quick, I can show you what that looks like. So this is the dashboard for Advanced Threat Analytics. And inside of ATA, we can see that this was doing a successful enumeration of all the users and groups, right? So I can start getting alerts to say somebody's poking around in Active Directory doing things that is not normal for a user to do, and then start taking actions. I can go click on this machine, and I can see who's logged into the machine, what other services they've touched and talked to, who else has been on the computer. One thing you'll notice is that the Haxor account does not show up in this list because the Haxor account is local to the machine. It's not Active Directory. But I do still see the actions of the computer talking to Active Directory. So that's just a real quick overview of ATA. So if we go back over here to our workstation, now that we have this incredible local administrator password, we want to use our lateral movement tool, remote desktop, to jump over to our app server. So if we want to go to app server, and we want to log into app server using the local admin account and the password that we just scraped out of the website, and because they're using the same practice of creating a local administrator account on a workstation and on a server, I can now use that credential to jump onto a member server. And remember, I'm sitting in a car in the parking lot on the Wi-Fi. So there's an awful lot of bad stuff that's going on and decisions here to make this work. So if we take a look real quick on the, what do we do about this? Well, lapse would help. If we were using different passwords, at the very least, I couldn't have just used the same credential to jump in. Another one is the firewall. Many organizations still are disabling the Windows firewall because they want to ping a remote desktop to a server. That's incredibly lazy and terrible. It should not be done, and I scold them every time I see it. But they do it because they've always done it that way. And if they continue to do it that way, they're going to be hurting. So they need to stop. But one of the things we can do with group policy is we can limit the source IPs, right? So we can use jump boxes just with group policy. If we don't have the ability to physically segment our networks, which honestly is what should be done, you can start at the very least by saying the only way you can RDP is you come from this IP. So that everybody has to go to one box where more monitoring and tools can be put in place for controlling access. And then you can only use that to get to the other machines just by configuring a group policy. We can also say that you cannot RDP with a local account, right? You can say this local account cannot be used remotely. So even if they did have the same password and they could RDP to the machine would say, nope, you're not local admin, or you are a local admin, not an Active Directory account, and you can't RDP to the machine. So there's a variety of things we can do just to stop that. Okay, so we're on the machine now. It's time to level up a little bit. Let's take a look at this computer. And on the server, sometimes what we'll do is we'll take a look at what's on the machine, right? Check out what roles are installed, what products are installed, see if there's some kind of compromises or things that we want to take off of the machine. But really the easiest thing is if we look on services. Now, we'll do updates later. We do services. Inside of services, we can see any kind of processes that are set to run. And in this case, I do have a service that's running my domain administrator account on here. So, lucky me, this machine that I could log in as a local admin account can also see that this domain administrator account is being used as a service. Well, if you think about how this service is being used, the machine, when it reboots, has to be able to use the credentials to run the service under that account. And that means that the password is saved on the machine, so it can use it to authenticate, right? Well, since I'm a local admin, I can do things as the system, and if the system can get at the password, I can get at the password. All right, so if we want to do that, we're going to use another tool. And this time, we're going to go to the C drive. We're going to make another tools folder. We'll go back to the laptop, and on the USB drive, in the tools directory, I have this tool called CQ Secrets Number from Secure Academy. So the Secure Academy team did this blog about service accounts, and on their website you can go and download this tool, and it's right here, and it's got a nice password on it, so you can't just use it without knowing what you got, right? But we can use this tool. Just go ahead and copy this, and we're going to take PS exec as well, because we have to run this as system. So in the tools directory, we'll paste these two things. We'll go ahead and open up a command prompt again. And we'll go to our tools directory. We'll run PS exec with a system interactive do not wait cmd.exe. And in our system, right, if I say who am I, we can see that I'm running a system now. I can run the CQ Secrets Number tool. And then it tells us how this works. It says you just need to tell me what service you want, right? So that's right over here. It says tell me the name of the service. So we'll go into our management console. We'll copy the name of our service out of there, and then we're going to run the CQ Secrets Number service equals the service name, and then it dumps out the password for us. So we can go ahead and mark this. We'll highlight the text. And then we're going to take that text over to our other hacker tool, Notepad. And we're going to replace all of the dots with nothing. And then we'll remove our line breaks. Oh, close this. And then we've got our password. So this is actually the password for that service account. So of all the bad decisions and practices that we've seen in this setup so far, they're actually using a pretty good password here. But it turns out that doesn't matter because it's just saved in the registry, and I can scoop it right out. So we'll copy this password, and now we want to jump into, actually, let's jump to the deck for a second and say, what can we do about this, right? So, let's see, these are all the things that we can do here. If we're looking at activities that are happening on this machine, we can use the group policies so that we can prevent access with these local accounts, right? So you can't RDP in with the local administrator account. If we want to stop using some of these tools, we can use things like device guard, right? So you can't run that process. And then we can also do some monitoring with things like sysmon. So as much as we might beat up on using tools like PS exec to get to system, sysmon can give us a lot of logging and monitoring. And if you've seen Swift on Security's blog or Twitter feed, the XML file for configuration that's out there, even Mark Rusinovich is saying, yeah, that's a good model to follow. So you can deploy sysmon to see, process forking and other activities, and then harvest those logs so that you can see what's happening in the environment. Okay, so now we've gone through the workstation. It's time to finish our movement and get onto the domain controllers. So at this point, we have quite a bit of information, right? We know about the Active Directory. We know about a domain administrator account. We know that domain administrator's password. And we also know that we want to get onto the PDC. So if we use remote desktop, we can go to DC3. And now in DC3, we do want to log into the domain with our app service account with our nice password. And now I can get on the DC. So far, I haven't even really used any hacking tools, right? I mean, I used PS exec and CQ Secrets Number, but I'm just using stuff that's built into Windows because there's a lot of really bad decisions on how this stuff has been set up. And I made my way all the way from a workstation that I have no credentials or access to, and I'm sitting on the DC now. So now that I'm in the DC, we want to take Active Directory, right? So we can do that with another Windows tool. We don't have to use any other kind of hacking stuff for that. So what I did is wrote a script real quick just because I don't like typing in front of people. So we'll go on the DC. We'll open up a Notepad and paste our script over here. And then we'll open up a command prompt. Now, in Active Directory, it's just a database, right? So the files that we want are right here under the ntds folder. And what I really want is this ntds.dit file, of course. But because it's a running domain controller, the file is locked, right? It's in process because it's being queried by authentications of users. So just copying the file isn't really gonna work for me. Plus, there's a system file that I need that has basically the secrets that let me see the inside of this database. So I need those two files, and they're both locked. So what we'll do is we'll just use volume shadow copy, because volume shadow copy lets us copy files that are locked by a process, and it's just built into Windows. So if we go over here, open up our command prompt, and in here we're going to go ahead and create ourselves a directory. I actually don't know why I decided to call it Pwn instead of tools this time, but whatever. And then what we'll do is use volume shadow copy to create a shadow of the C drive, and later we'll also do the F drive where the other file is. But when you do this, it spits out this line that tells me the name of the partition that it just made. So in this case, it's 7, right? I've done this a couple times. So the volume shadow copy number 7. So in my script, I need to change this right here to a 7, and when I make the next one, it just increments, so it's going to be 8. So what I'm doing here is literally just a copy command. I'm literally just copying the file from the shadow copy volume to the C drive. And then I'm going to remove that volume shadow copy just so I can, clean up the tracks. And then I'll come over here and do the other volume as well. So this will do copying of the other file also to the same folder and clean up the mess. So if we come over to our C drive in this Pwn directory, I have now the ntds.dit and system files. And to exfiltrate that, we'll use another hacker tool, Windows, and create us a zip file on the desktop. And it will then give me all of the things that I've been looking for, which is all of the users' accounts, their password hashes, groups, and anything else that I want to get out of Active Directory. And I'll just come over here and paste it onto my thumb drive. So I just got everything I wanted, right? I made it to the domain, I stole Active Directory, and I was in and out. Now, everything I did, super, super loud, right? I was using tools that leave trails and tracks all over the place, but nobody's looking, right? So that's why it works, because there's nothing being done to track and monitor and alert on it. Now, of course, I did put some things in here to show some alerts and stuff, but if nobody's watching those alert cues, I just went in and out of there in less than an hour. So, what can we do about that? Well, for one, well, if we can stop access to the domain controller, that's going to help a lot, right? If you can't touch the DC, you can't steal things. One of the reasons that I showed that notepad trick is if I can get physical access to a DC, you can boot off of another media and literally just copy the 2 files you need because they're not going to be in use, right? So the whole thing could have been done if the machine was a DC instead of a laptop. So like branch offices with a DC under a desk are a terrible idea. But we can also use group policy to do things like prevent access to domain controllers unless you're a domain admin, or prevent the use of a domain admin account on a machine that's not a domain controller. We can also just restrict access to the physical machines. Okay, so in the whole attack line that we went through, right, we went through and we stole all this stuff. And if we kind of take a glance back at this to understand, what can we do about it, just wanted to put together a slide that kind of put it all in one. So we did the sticky keys hijack, and I have another demo that actually uses a phishing macro. If you want the deck, I actually show you a link in that so you can see that too. And then the things that we can do to stop it, right? Encryption is a big part of this first step, is protecting the asset from compromise. We can also take the part where we're doing a lot of the recon and lateral movement stuff, where we're actually doing mostly monitoring and protection. And then for Active Directory, the only one I showed was ntds.dit, but there's a lot of other really fun things you can do to a domain controller if you actually get access to it. But protecting that comes down to preventing access to it, and group policy isolation and things like device guard to prevent certain tools from running. One of the things that we do with our customers is we try to align some of the solutions and ways of solving these problems with the NIST CSF. So sometimes this goes a long way to talk with businesses about what you can do specifically, right? These particular things address this column of activity in the CSF. A lot of organizations need those kinds of references to to be able to take some actions and narrow scope of engagements down. And so just another slide of all the people that most of this stuff came from. I assume most of you have heard of or seen these people before, but they have so much more out there. A lot of the things that I went through, I learned from these guys. So very, very inspirational. I really appreciate the things that they put out there. And if you want to learn more, check these guys out. And if you want the deck, go ahead and shoot me an email with that subject line. It'll automatically reply. It's not going to like a spam list or something. It's literally just coming to me. And I'll reply with the deck of all the things that you've seen so far. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Shannon, back to the subject of using service accounts.
Service accounts, yeah.
If your auditor tells your business partner who you pay to administer your network with your organization, and to just set service account to expire periodically or annually in most cases.
Yeah, that comes up on audits and whether or not your service accounts change.
That business partner who's actually hands-on in the IT operation, what must they also do to protect service accounts if they don't want to really manage all service accounts? Is there any, I watched a high-profile kind of, we're setting all our service accounts to expire periodically.
Yeah.
That won't get it.
Well, are you asking what you can do about service accounts that change? So there's a variety of things you can do. One of them using group managed service accounts. So if you're using a group managed service account, it manages the servers in the environment, manage the password of service accounts, much like they manage their own passwords. So the more you can use group managed service accounts, the better. I must have glossed over that part. I think I skipped a slide or something. But yeah, a group managed service account is something that's new for Server 2012 and 2012 R2, so that you can use a GMSA instead of what is really just a user account, right? So that's one thing. If you can't use a GMSA, then there are products and tools you can use, like Thycotic has a tool that will roll passwords and service accounts for you. Thycotic, it's like psychotic, but a TH. And there's a couple other products like that too. They will actually programmatically roll and change those passwords for you. Yeah, you bet. So anyway, I hope that you guys liked it, and if you had any questions or if you have other examples, I would love to hear them because I like to tell these kinds of stories. So thank you very much, and I'll see you later.